I think I can confidently say now that after a couple rewatches, the new Total Drama Island season that came out this year was a step in the right direction for this franchise, and shows that it did not die with Total Drama Rama. With this new season, we also got a new cast, the next generation of Total Drama players. Some of them are better than others, some have potential for greatness in the future, and others may need to be retired early. Today, I'm going to be ranking the new cast from worst to best with the help of a tier list, which I'll leave the link to in the description down below. D tier is for my least favorite characters of this new cast. C tier is for the characters that overall I'm just a bit mixed on. I don't really like or dislike them particularly. B tier is for the characters that I did like overall. A tier is for the characters that I loved to watch this season. And S tier is for the GOATs, the people in this cast who I thought were the best of the best. In case it isn't already obvious, there's going to be spoilers for the new season in this video, so if you haven't seen it already, you can go ahead and skip this one. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Coming in at dead last for me might be a bit of a shock, but for me, it's Emma. Now I know, usually there's two other players who take this spot, but for me, Emma just disappointed me overall. Emma's relationship slash negative obsession slash regular obsession with Chase just drags her down so hard. She spent way too much of the season either talking about how much she hated him or fawning over him. Outside of that, she had a certain quirkiness to her which was pretty charming to see.
Sometimes I just come in here to be alone and dance.
But it got overshadowed heavily by her thing with Chase. I do like the writing in that having this really toxic relationship kind of destroys her relationships with other people, but it's still pretty hard to watch overall, man. I also really enjoyed her friendship with Bowie too, until it got destroyed in episode 11. Bowie really did speak facts for her, man.
Dogwater. The only thing more pathetic than him is you for liking him.
Like, she takes his vote for Chase personally, even though she was the one who made him dislike Chase by talking to him about all the bad things he kept on doing.
Is this nigga serious?
Her downfall in episode 11, after switching up on Bowie, just satisfied me, honestly. Like, if she was a villain, this would be like one of the best villain downfalls of all time in the show, to be honest. What a shame, man. Honestly, for me, in season 2, she either has to officially dump Chase, or her and him both need to be Bridget and Jeff in Total Drama action and get out quick. Emma and Chase truly are two halves of a whole idiot. And that's very fitting, since the second member of D tier is Chase. I definitely agree that this guy is probably one of the worst people we've seen on the show that isn't just a full-on antagonist, and easily one of the worst boyfriends on this whole show, along with Emma and Chase being one of the worst ships in the entire series, but that's a whole nother thing to talk about. But I will admit, I did find him pretty entertaining on some occasions.
When people insult your intelligence, it means they can't find anything wrong with the way you look.
Like, I find it so funny that so many people before the season came out thought he was going to be a chill, friendly guy on the island, only for him to just basically be the personification of the narcissistic, selfish influencer, man. Him genuinely being confused as to why Emma hates him while being the human version of a slime ball is just so stupidly funny to me, honestly. It's kind of wild to think that even though he was such a prick, he ends up getting rewarded by getting his girl back, and even gets eliminated with pizza from Chris. By the way, jumping off a platform for a slice of pizza is probably the realest thing Chase has done, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I guess he does pretty much bury his reputation amongst the others left, but I mean, he doesn't really care, so no karma really for him. With all those good things about him being said, yeah, he definitely lacks for me in terms of his dynamics with other characters. Even more so than Emma, I feel like his main shtick this whole season revolved around her, whereas he didn't really have any interesting relationships with any of the other players on the island. The only exceptions to that, I'd say, would be probably Z and Ripper, which I love to watch their bromance overall. But other than that, he really did satellite heavily around Emma, while still not being that interesting outside of her. Watching him just keep flirting with her and getting shot down got really tiring for me. And yeah, like I said with Emma, either they need to be Bridget and Jeff 2.0 next time, or maybe he'll get some development and say, hey, I am a really bad person, and change for the better. But we'll have to see on that. Up next, starting off the C tier, we have Caleb. Now, people pretty correctly guessed off the bat that he was going to be the first boot, since with the promo footage we got, he was barely in anything, so that was a bit of a disappointment. It kind of sucks that he pretty much got the same treatment as Justin in Total Drama Island, but I do see potential in him going forward. In both the premiere and the finale, we saw that he was pretty salty about what happened to him, courtesy of Bowie. And while he doesn't need to be a full-blown villain, since that would make him an even bigger copy of Justin, I would definitely like to see him maybe be a bit more cutthroat, or at the very least just have a bigger presence next season and play harder so that he doesn't get voted off early again. I mean, with Bowie already being a finalist this season, I don't expect him to get super far again, so maybe Caleb could take revenge on him next season. That could be something interesting to watch, depending on the execution, of course. Not much really to say about him overall, though. Yeah, he's pretty much a blank slate with interesting plots that could happen in the future. Just barely enough to keep him out of D tier. Following up Caleb, for me, has to be Millie. Now, I don't hate Millie as much as I see a lot of other people seem to, but I still don't like her that much overall. Now, to Millie's credit, she's generally one of the only people in this season that has a significant arc in terms of character development, like changing from the start of the season to the end of the season. I mean, she goes from being one of those stuck-up, my generation sucks type of people, to realizing that her judgment of others just came from her own insecurity. And that was great. Her befriending Priya with ulterior motives and then realizing she cares about her is pretty great. I like that plotline overall. I mean, she even goes as far as to try and throw the game, so just so that she could fix what she messed up. My biggest problem with Millie, though, just comes from her presence in the game overall outside of Priya. Like, the word floater gets thrown a lot with certain characters who kind of fly under the radar, and I unfortunately do think Millie kind of falls into that category. Like, she just lacks something in her presence in the game. Like, with how well written her arc is in the season, it's kind of weird how her personality is kind of dry for me. In terms of the Priya-Millie duo, Priya 100% carries it for me. And she doesn't really have the favor returned until the last couple episodes of the season. I don't know what it is. I feel like if maybe she had a certain extra element to her, like MK snark or being just a bit more intelligent overall, like Damien, something to bounce off her kind of nerdy book girl personality, I feel like that would have helped her out a lot. Instead, she kind of falls into this weird place where, despite having one of the best stories in the season, she's one of the least interesting for me to watch due to how bland she is outside of it. At the bottom of my B tier lies a very scalding hot take. Ripper. Hold up. Hear me out. Hear me out. Ripper being so unapologetically awful to pretty much everybody while trying to be a fake tough guy and failing miserably was so fun to watch, in my opinion. One big thing that stood out about Ripper compared to a lot of others in this season too was that he had a lot of interesting dynamics with many of the contestants in this season. From his individual rivalries with Axel and Priya and Millie to his romances with Chase and Z. He's probably one of the only characters in the season that had a lot of moments with pretty much everybody in this cast. Now, with that being said, he does obviously have quite a few flaws that have made him hated by quite a lot of people who watch this new season. For one, he kind of falls in line with Owen and Sugar in terms of being that fart joke type of character. Come to think of it, the second generation is the only cast that doesn't have a character like that. Anyways, yeah, with him being closer to Sugar due to his more antagonistic tendencies, although he isn't one of the main antagonists of this season, so that is something to note. Within the last few years, the fan base has definitely gotten kind of tired with the fart humor overall, especially with some of the more questionable jokes in the franchise, as well as episode 5. Ugh. So his whole presence was enough to turn a lot of people off from liking him overall. I get it, but I do think that outside of his party humor, he's pretty solid in the role he plays this season. He goes at a pretty good time, and he has some pretty memorable lines overall.
You're not gonna see me crying. I'll wait till I get home.
I did find him to be a pretty interesting competitor, using some very underhanded and cruel tactics that tend to get him close to winning, but not quite there. And like I said, him being that dumbass jerk kind of character makes him a bit more charming to watch to me than like somebody like Chase, who is basically the same character but a lot less self-aware and more desperate. With some development next season, I easily can see Ripper climbing up my list. Funny enough, right after Ripper, in B tier, also comes Axel. Now to me, alongside quite a few other people in this tier, I really think that Axel has some untapped potential in the future. Without much else to her, she does feel like a big combination of just Eva and Sean, being that she's a bit crazy and someone who likes to take control while also not being that good with interacting with people. As I mentioned earlier, I did like her beef with Ripper, but obviously her being the second boot just like Eva means we didn't get much of her overall. Completely unexpected to me, I really found her presence in the finale to be really fun to watch. She had so many great lines and showed that she could have some great scenes with other people next season. I really hope that we get to see her flourish a bit more socially, or at the very least continue to freak others out in more unconventional ways. Following up right after Axel comes Miss Nichelle LaDonna. Now first off, I really gotta say, it's so funny to look back on all the predictions that were made before the season came out and compare it to what we actually got. So many people thought she was going to be the Heather of this season, with Julia basically being her Lindsay, and man was that wrong. I like the idea of a teen celebrity on Total Drama, somebody who everybody in the cast actually knows. Now, the reveal of her faking her stunts, nice work Jerry, and essentially being a fraud in terms of her physical ability was a bit rushed in episode 3, I gotta admit. She got a lot of focus at the start of the episode, but neither of the episodes before it really foreshadowed that, so it did come off a bit weird in terms of how it was paced in the actual episode. But I do really like the concept of a middle-aged stunt double in a wig doing all of that, just being so funny, man. Now what I and a lot of other people want next season is redemption. She needs to improve her skills and show that she isn't going to embarrass herself again like she did. The writers really did set up a pretty straightforward arc for her to have next season, so fingers crossed they actually follow through on it. In 9th place, also joining these others in B tier, comes one half of the Hockey Bros, Raj. Off the bat, I really gotta say, I love the duo of the Hockey Bros, man. Their friendship is so wholesome, and they have so many great comedic moments between themselves and the other players. Raj himself had a really nice romance plotline with Bowie, and I thought it was pretty sweet, even though overall we didn't get too much of it in the actual season. It was very nice to see Raj finally come out to Wayne as well and trust him with telling him his feelings about Bowie. Now, Raj is a bit lower than Wayne simply because I feel like while he did have more interesting plots and dynamics going on, I feel like he himself was the less interesting part of that dynamic. Kind of like what I said about Millie earlier on. Like, in terms of the Hockey Bro duo, I'd definitely say that Raj is the Sadie to Wayne's Katie in terms of personality and standing out. Same with his relationship with Bowie. I do think Bowie is definitely the more compelling character overall. Regardless, though, I still like Raj quite a bit, and I hope we get to see more of him kind of on his own, kind of fleshing out his personality a bit next season. Wrapping up the B tier is Scary Girl. aka Lauren. I do have to say, Scary Girl is quite easily the most outlandish and bizarre member of this new cast without any debate whatsoever. With how realistic these new characters have felt for the most part, she does stick out a bit, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. But overall, I did find her to be pretty funny. Watching her scare the crap out of people like Priya and Damien especially was really great to watch. Now, obviously, she didn't last too long, and I actually think that might have been for the best since she stood out while not being too much of a screen hog or being too wacky for too long. But I do hope that next season she gets a bit more of an arc or a storyline just in general. I really don't want her to just be a gimmick type of character like, Pocketail Island. I just really want her to be herself while also having more interesting dynamics with more of the players around her. Not much else to say about her. Moving on to the next person. At the bottom of my A tier, we have the resident pickpocket of the season, MK. Off the bat, I just gotta say, I really love her voice. Like, it's so unique in a weird way that it's very, very distinct. I found out recently that MK is most likely a reference to Awkwafina's character from the 2018 Ocean's 8 movie. And after looking up clips from the movie, yeah, that seems to be true. Side note, I really do like the return of having characters who are based off of other people for movies. That's great. I love seeing that again. Anyways, I did find MK's standoffish, snarky nature to be pretty great. But overall, I'm just really impressed by how much she managed to do in only 6 episodes as a player. Not only did she leave a pretty good impression on me, but she caused a lot of drama to happen even after she was already gone. While it didn't get used as much as it probably could have been, I really liked the idea of watching the confessionals to see just what exclusive information other people are giving out about themselves. Plus, she ended up exposing Julia's true nature, which caused a huge ripple effect throughout the rest of the season. I don't think people talk enough about Julia and MK's short-lived conflict in general, honestly. It just started off with MK stealing her phone in episode 1, and then Julia setting up for elimination in the episode 6. It's crazy. I like how, when you really think about it, MK's elimination is kind of a reverse of Dawn's. I mean, she gets framed for stealing stuff after something involving the confessional, although this time she actually was stealing from them, so yeah. Now, MK does have potential to potentially be a full-blown villain next season, but I do kind of hope she stays in that anti-hero type of zone, while maybe making a few more allies across the way. Next up, we have the other half of the Hockey Bros, with Wayne. Now, as I said with Raj earlier on, I really loved the friendship between him and Wayne, and I just found they had a lot of funny moments together. I love to see Wayne being the extra caring friend, just itching to have his friend come out to him so he can show him support. Wayne is essentially the inverse of my take on Raj. Like, personality-wise, I feel like he stood out more and he had a lot more iconic, funny lines throughout the season. But while his personality stood out more, he definitely had less going on in terms of overall storylines, which I guess kind of balances the two of them out. Regardless, while I don't have too much else to say on him, I found him to be really likable, and I definitely want to see more of him going forward. Give him his own plot next season, Total Drama Writers. Come on, let's go. Following up, my favorite half of the Hockey Bros, we have, at the time, the only winner of the season at the moment, Priya. Priya had a lot of potential to end up falling into that unfortunate category of the athletic girl who easily makes it to the end without much interesting about her. That type of category that people lump characters like Sky and Zoe into. I don't fully agree with that take on either of those characters, but that's a whole nother story. Thankfully, they avoided that. I actually find it really clever and funny on Total Drama that they did a twist on that stereotypical Asian kid trained to be the most academically successful person in the world type of trope, and instead had it completely revolve around Total Drama instead. Like, just the idea of fans of the old show training their children to be on a reboot of it is just so funny to me. Along with her athletic prowess, I feel like Priya has a bit of charm to her in that she's a bit socially awkward while also having a bit of feistiness to her, which she unleashes on people like Ripper and Julia. Of course, there's also her main plot line with Millie, the friendship, that I do think she carried overall, in terms of entertainment value at least. It was interesting to see Priya kind of slowly get fed up with Millie's antics and lack of effort, as well as her being a pretty big punching bag in episodes 10 and 11 when she kept on getting hurt. I definitely think she did deserve her win, and she earned it in her ending. I do unfortunately think that next season she's probably not going to get too far due to her finalist status, which is a damn shame, but reasonable. And the last person in A tier is the surprise villain of the season, Julia. Julia seriously surprised me with what she brought to this new season. While she was in her granola, hippie, Instagram influencer role, honestly I didn't really care for her that much, and I seriously wondered where her arc was going to go after Nichelle's really early boot in episode 3. What I love is that, especially on rewatches, you see so many early glimpses into who she truly is, with just some minor things like her offhanded insults towards Emma's appearance that she makes in a couple of episodes before she gets exposed. She gets 10 times better though when she stops caring and just fully unleashes her bitchy self to everybody on the island and to the rest of the viewing audience. I thought she was really effective in her role as the villain, getting some people like MK and Emma out, and also being a pretty big comp beast overall. I mean, she got 3 wins after the merge, which is pretty great. And I loved her rivalry with Bowie too, which I'll talk about more later on, and how it even continued into the finale with such extreme levels of pettiness from her. Obviously, the main villain comparison between her would definitely be Heather in the original Total Drama Island, and honestly, while Heather is definitely more iconic without a doubt, there are definitely some elements where Julia is better than Heather. Like Julia not winning invincibility too many times, and also not surviving off of pure luck, while there also is still an explanation for why she doesn't get eliminated when she doesn't have immunity, like in episode 10. The only downside to her that I'd note is that while I did enjoy the build up to her unleashing herself, the actual moment where she does it feels like it comes very, very fast and kind of out of nowhere in the episode. I mean, episode 5 overall is a bit of a mess, and her cussing out the raptor is the best part of that episode, but there isn't really much of a build up to that scene happening. It just kind of happens and then she's exposed. Like, if she had gotten more and more annoyed with just the farting overall throughout the episode, maybe that would have been a good way to build up to that scene. But yeah, wasn't executed the best, but I still love it overall. She was a very fun character to watch, and I'm very interested to see where she goes next season. We only have 3 characters left to rank. Now, the bronze medal and first person in S tier is Bowie. Before the season started, Bowie was a character that I was very, very curious about. With the info that we were giving about some of the demographics that would be featured in this season, Bowie was a bit of a divisive one off the bat amongst fans. We were told that there was going to be 2 characters who were openly part of the LGBT community, and off design alone, I know some people were very worried that he was going to be an annoying stereotype type of character. Thankfully, I can pretty easily say that that is not the case, and in fact, he is definitely one of the season's best characters overall. I like that Bowie's very proud of himself, and while he does take a spot as one of the 2 main antagonists of the season alongside Julia, I like that he was very different in the way he played the game compared to a lot of other antagonists, where while he was competitive and could be pretty ruthless, he did genuinely build up friendships and romances with people he cared about, instead of just using them to get further along in the game. That made him a very interesting player to root for, making him feel a lot more like an anti-hero overall at times. Besides him trying to destroy Millie and Priya's friendship, but that's a different story. He obviously had his nice relationship with Roz and a pretty decent friendship with Emma until she destroyed it, and some other pretty cool dynamics throughout the season too. Similar to Priya though, I don't expect him to get too far next season since he potentially won a season. We haven't seen his ending out yet, so we don't know if he does have an ending, but I hope he does. But I do hope next season he gets some more time to shine. He isn't my number 1 or number 2, but out of my top 3, he's definitely the most fleshed out and well written, so props to him for that. In second place, earning the silver medal, is Z. Now, as I mentioned before, Bowie most likely has better character writing than my top two, but Z generally might be one of the funniest characters in the entire series, man. This dude cracked me up so many times throughout the season. It's pretty funny to think that he's probably the first, if not one of the first, stoner stereotypes in the show. And I love that they used soda as a substitute for the Zaza. That's great. I never expected that he was going to be the amputee character too. Like, for some reason, when I heard amputee, I just immediately assumed that the character was going to be in a wheelchair. Though, considering that this is total drama we're talking about, it's probably a good idea that they didn't have the amputee in a wheelchair. Who knows what would have happened? The one thing I was hoping for was that the amputee character would be somebody like Toph from Avatar, someone who has a disability, but tends to be more humorous about it and is very, very proud of who they are. And that's exactly what the writers did, which I'm very happy about. I love the subtle detail of him switching from his long pants to shorts after the leg got taken off by the shark. And there's just a lot of fun gags that involved it too. He just had funny line.
Oh, is this squirrel? Bruh, you can really taste the nut.
After funny line.
I gave that cassowary a fake phone number because she seemed a little obsessed, and I was worried she might
After funny line.
Never happened to me before, but I think I'm getting an idea. Yeah, I'm totally ideaing. I ideaed.
In episode 9, while it was his elimination episode, was probably his best in my opinion too, since he was so entertaining to watch being in the middle of those two alliances. I don't know where he might go in the future, arc-wise, besides continuing his friendships with Chase and Ripper, but I really hope he gets decently far next season too, since he is great comedic relief for this show. Last, but certainly not least, the gold medal for my favorite character of Total Drama Island 2023. And the top of the S tier on this list goes to Damien. Damien is World Tour DJ done much, much better. The concept of somebody applying to Total Drama off a dare without any knowledge of what it actually is so funny to me. And it's very, very reminiscent of the original season, where nobody knew what was actually in store for them since they got lied to about it being a resort. It was so funny watching Damien be so stressed out about everything and just wanting to leave so badly once things started to get crazy. And unfortunately, right as he finally starts to find his groove in the game, his likability backfires on him and he gets his wish with being voted out. The amount of potential he has next season is insane. Watching him go from scared newbie to confident competitor is what I absolutely need. I also love that his personality was very different to what was expected. A lot of people expected him to be a cool guy or a rapper or something like that. Instead, he ended up being a bit of a nerd.
Nerd, 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 nerd.
I like that they didn't have my guy looking like the walking nerd emoji and actually had him be a smart guy while also being very chill. Kind of like a more talkative version of B. Honestly, in terms of personality, I'd say I definitely relate to Damien the most. Hopefully that doesn't sound too corny. With that mixture of book smarts while also being decently sociable and a bit of a word at times. Like I said, similarly to Nichelle, this guy needs to make it far next season. Also, I'm really trying to see a relationship between him and Priya, but that's something to discuss in another video. If he doesn't make it to at least the merge next season, I'll have to personally box the writers. I'm not gonna lie, I'll have to do it. My guy Damien is my number one. Very relatable, very funny, so much potential going forward. I need to see it. And that's it. How do you feel about my final tier list? Who would you move up and who would you move down? Let's talk about it in the comments. I'm glad to be making videos again. It's been way too long. I do plan on branching out from just Total Drama stuff and covering other shows, games, social media, just stuff in the pop culture zeitgeist, you know? But yeah, that's it for me. Stay tuned. Anyways, I'm JJ, and that's me signing out.